Dr. Harold Hahn, also known as the Happy Chemist. It's awesome to have you on MyFlora Fridays. I would introduce you, but you know you better than I know you. So why don't you go ahead and tell us who you are, what you do, and sort of, what you do in the cannabis industry. What brought you to cannabis?
Thank you, Anna, for inviting me. And before I go, happy birthday to you today. And I'm
Oh, thank
honored, I'm
you.
honored to talk to a birthday girl today. So it's an honor it's an experience of a journey for me to bring what I know to the industry. And what I know is emotion, how to design an emotion, how to evaluate emotion, how to use an emotion. And for people who don't know emotion, it is a system that combines oil with water, right? They don't love each other. But when you combine them into a very sophisticated way, they can not only stay stable by themselves, but they can deliver a certain effect, right? Such as changing the water compatibility of a certain material. And that application is key, especially in the cannabis industry, because cannabinoids, as we know, are oil soluble, right? Because of
Mhm.
this, we had limited ways of consuming cannabinoids previously, smoking or eating a gummy or brownies, right? Because gummy and brownies, they have oil soluble part. They can, kind of dissolve and homogenize the cannabinoids. But when you try to put cannabinoids into aqueous containing product, like beverages, some creams, toners, then the difficulty shows, right? It doesn't go in themselves. So they all need certain type of technology to convert them into an ingredient that go into water. So
Right.
my background as an emulsion chemist coming into the industry 7 years ago, really what brought me in is I started to realize our society had too many technology advance, but not enough true happiness to ourselves. We had many developed data, but we're losing the way to know the wisdom in
Hmm.
ourselves. So I thought, the cannabis plant not only can heal us, right, on the therapeutical side, but it can only also, make us happy, deliver pleasure, in a way when we consume it recreationally. So the plant is one of the key, thing for the society to evolve. So that I thought that is really what society needs. And it's just lucky that, this plant, there is a way for me to put my knowledge into this industry, which is the emotion application.
You're an emulsion chemist, and you've found a way to use the emulsion technology to deliver cannabinoids, cannabis, to our bodies in a more efficient manner than eating or consuming via eating, which would be, as you said, gummies or a brownie or some kind of butter or oil delivery. The thing with when you eat it, it has to go through your stomach, down into your intestines, which it's then absorbed, goes to your liver, and then these secondary metabolites are formed, and that's what takes so long for the activity of a edible to work. And also why it feels so different, because after it goes through the liver, right, it's actually not THC anymore. It's a secondary metabolite, which is a different compound, and it makes you feel different, which is why some people say, "Oh, I like edibles better," or "Oh, I can't handle edibles," or "Oh, I can't feel edibles at all." And this emulsion technology, is it absorbed more rapidly or before it gets to the gut? Is that the idea? Because it's like, tell me how it works.
Yes. So you are approaching this PK/PD topic, right? How do we understand the efficacy of emotion delivering cannabinoids into our body? And we have done some human IRB proved PK study using gummy as a vehicle. And we compared emotion infused gummy versus a regular distillate infused gummy. And for the 6 people on 2 different days, everything else the same. We see that when you consume a distillate infused gummy, the 6 people, the Tmax, the time to maximum concentration in the blood,
Hmm.
varies from 45 minutes to 180 minutes. Well, for the 6 people consuming emotion infused gummy, all 6 people, their blood concentration peaked within 10 minutes of consuming the gummy. So this
Whoa.
is really surprising to us to find out, wow, the Tmax is significantly lower compared to distillate infused gummy. And the reason is, we have been working with Professor Matt Clemens from UC Amherst, He is the well-known professor in emotion in food. The theories to support this is that, cannabinoids as an oil-soluble drug is absorbed mainly in the small intestines. Our whole body is a natural emulsifying machine, right? When you eat a burger, the fat is absorbed in the small intestines, but the fat is so big, such a big molecule, it's a big droplets, it cannot absorb by itself. So the fat has to be emulsified into very tiny, small fat droplets in your small intestines in order to be absorbed. And that small aggregation is called mix. So if
Is that what bile does? Is that the function of bile is to emulsify fats?
yes,
Okay.
bile, when we eat fat, your brain triggers the gallbladder to release bile salt. And the bile is your natural emulsifier in the body to transfer the big oil into mixed micelle so you can absorb it.
In my brain, and it's been a long time since I took a chemistry class, but in my brain, I kind of see like emulsification as like when you have, you mix oil and water or like oil and vinegar, like salad dressing. At first, they kind of say separated, and you can shake it a little bit, and then you see kind of those big blobby droplets. But then if you shake the shit out of it, it kind of all gets cloudy, and there's like the oil and the vinegar are not completely mixed, but they're way more mixed than when they were. But you got to shake the shit out of it, right?
Yes, to make a good emulsion, you not only need the energy, which is the physics, right? But you need the chemistry, which is the combination of emulsifiers and oil ratios, water ratios. When you combine the two, chemistry with physics together in a very organic way, then the emulsion is not only stable, but scalable and consistent. So back to the small intestines, the way if you eat a distillate infused product, right? That imagine that is a big fat oil droplets. And
Hmm.
that from that to mix micelle, it's going to take a long time for your small intestines to agitate to conform into, mixed micelle. But if you feed the gut a already emulsified ingredients, droplets, then the path from that droplets to mixed micelle is much shorter. That's why our body had very easier time to absorb the THC from the emulsion.
And so, what is a mixed? It's mixed micelle.
Mixed
What?
micelle is about 50 to 100 nanometer size and is consisted mainly by fat and fat soluble drugs like THC, biosalt, phospholipids. So it's aggregation of emulsifiers and fat and lipid.
And if I remember micelles right from again my long time ago chemistry classes, micelle is like something that is like water and then surrounded by those fat molecules with their hydrophobic and hydrophilic bits sticking in and out of that thing. I don't know if I can explain that well, or maybe you can explain it
Yes,
better.
yes. So micelle is the smallest aggregates on theory that traps oil within water, right? So the oil is trapped within the core and there's water tails coming outside. The tail is contacting water. So it's making the oil kind of solubilized within
Okay.
water, right? So that's why mixed micelle is the smallest unit that our body absorb fat or fat soluble drugs.
Okay. I think that's so interesting. And again, if any of the audience wants to look this up on Wikipedia, it'd probably be really helpful. But so you were saying like the problem with, it's not a problem, but the thing with getting THC into food or beverage to be readily absorbable by your body is a challenge because we are water, they are fat. And so, like, and I know there's like sublingual things where you put it under your tongue, and that's a very thin layer of skin that the drugs can cross that barrier. But then once you get it down into your stomach and your intestines, it becomes a little more challenging for those drugs to absorb into your body and go to the liver. They don't go directly to the bloodstream, right? Which is where we want them to go.
So this is where getting into a pharmaceutical discussion like PK/PD. This is
Mm,
the holy grail of inventing a drug, right? And
mm.
how PK is when you take this medicine, how does your body absorb it? Absorption, distribution, metabolism, excretion. And then the PD is what does this molecule do to your body, right? How do you feel from the recreational or medicinal effect? So again, this is where we want to build a village of researchers who continuously looking into this, because from only one or two study, you can only see a snapshot of how this works. And this is where I got so encouraged by knowing, we were supporting Johns Hopkins. So 2 years ago, the researcher in Johns Hopkins, Ryan Vandry, Tori Spindle, they're looking at how would emulsified THC absorb any different from the gummy or brownies distillate version, right? So they are doing their PK/PD study. And just this year, we know that DCC in California has granted $2 million to UCSF. The researchers there, they want to study infused beverages, their PK/PD study. So I see, more researchers, hospitals, institutions starting to look into this. So that will answer your question. Sublingually, how does it work? Does it really bypass liver? If yes, what's the degree of bypassing liver? And then, for me, since a lot of American consumers already are liking or consuming infused beverages, then really answering, okay, if you have two beverages, 10 milligram, right? And if you sip on one, or another day you chug on one, right? What will be the PK different? And then imagine if you drink 10 milligram plus another 10 milligram plus another 10 milligram, are you getting 2 to 3 times higher blood PK or not linear, right? So all those fundamentals, I think we're getting closer to understand those fundamentals, and that will be really educational to millions of consumers.
Gotcha. The beverage thing is, well, the beverage infused beverage industry or products are huge, right? At my local liquor store, we have a whole section dedicated to infused beverages. I purchased one because I liked the flavor profile, like it was like blackberry lavender or something like that, and it only had 5 milligrams of THC in it. It was hemp derived, and all it did was give me a headache. So I'm feeling like maybe that company, the hemp derived cannabinoids that they put into that beverage, maybe there was some residual solvents or something, because it definitely like didn't feel like a clean product. So I won't be buying that brand again. And I don't even remember what the brand is, so I can't even call them out. But I know what the can looked like. I used to work at Mile High Labs, and they were working on nanoemulsions as well. And also the issue with the cannabinoids sticking to the inside of the can. So when they first make the beverage, it's at, let's say, 10 milligrams. It's they put it in the can, and then a period of time passes, and then it has little to no cannabinoids or THC in it. And for a while, they were trying to figure out where did it go. And it was sticking to the inside of the can. Do nano emulsions do a better job in formulation in a beverage like that, or have they fixed the can issue?
Yes, you're talking about the phenomenon called scalping. So scalping is the phenomenon that if this is the liner, if this is emulsion, and emulsion contains THC or CBD inside, right? So people observed that over time, there is a decay in the potency in the liquid, and people assume it's the emulsion droplets stuck to stuck to the liner. But through our validation study, it seems the mechanism is more like the THC or CBD inside the droplets. Actually, they're not staying inside constantly. They are jumping in and out at the boundary of the droplets constantly. So this phenomenon happens, and it happens to all hydrophobic oil-soluble compounds like flavor, and it just depending on the rate of this in and out is depending on the molecule structure, depending on the water content, right? Anyway, so if this happened, and if this thing is happening next to the can liner, and each liner has a certain chemistry that just like to absorb THC or CBD, then you will find the cannabinoid stuck to the liner, which is called scalping from the California market. In the beginning, every brand was using glass bottles, right? Because glass bottle is hydrophilic inside the liner, so there's no scalping potential. But then we start to work with companies in the packaging world. They are giant, but it's difficult for them to touch cannabis. So we collaborate with them. We get their liners. We're testing our emulsion against the liner because the two chemistry needs to match to each other, right? So I think we did nearly a years of testing, sharing data, and discussing. and we see trends, right? And then fast forward, right now, we have identified what emulsion formula is compatible with what liner. And a further step is the liner, by visually, you don't tell the liner apart, right? They all look similar, but then different liner performs differently. So we have to develop some tools for brands or co-packers to identify what liner is what. So this tool is thanks to Resco and other lab partners. We developed a FTIR method in which you cut the liner out and you put this liner part under IR, and the IR spectrum will tell you if the liner looks similar to a known liner. So you collect a couple of the known liners
Oh,
and compare, okay, is this a known liner 99% similar to any of the known liners? So this way we can potentially tell and build confidence with the co-packers.
that's GC but for can liners, where you've got a library of known liners and you're comparing your liner to what is
Exactly.
in the live. That's
Yeah.
cool.
It's
That's
like a
cool.
fingerprint.
I didn't even know that existed.
This is a new innovation, and we are working to put this method through ASTM, so it's become a national standard, so that not only cannabis industry, but any other food beverage industry can leverage this IR method to tell liner apart.
That's cool. So would you call yourself, obviously you're a chemist, but would you call yourself a product developer? Like, I'm very familiar with your product and I'm a big fan, right? I even brought to show like empty bottle, like, and then this one we're
Thank
going
you.
through. And this is a mixture of 2-to-1 CBD to CBG ratio.
CBD, CBD
Yeah,
to CBG, no
yeah.
THC. Yes.
Right, right.
Uh-huh.
So 50 to 25 milligrams of CBD to CBG in one serving.
Yes.
So and it's cool because it's a liquid, it's on a squirt bottle. You can just add it to any beverage that you're sipping on. So I'm a big fan of this. And with your nano emulsion technology, it makes it, as you were saying, a lot easier to put into beverages and it makes it a lot easier for the consumer to absorb that product. So what does like I feel like you are a supplier, right? Of this nano emulsion liquid for people to put in their beverages or their food products.
Mhm.
So tell me about that because I'm
Yeah.
super interested. I don't know much
Yeah.
about white labeling and product formulation, but I'd like to know
Yeah,
more.
yeah. So Vertosa is the ingredient provider. We are fortunate to work with so many great people and brands in the space on the infused beverage side. And that industry is growing, right? And I'm so
Hmm.
fortunate to see, to witness how many lives it can change, what kind of social impact it can bring to the society.
Hmm.
For back to the technology, the nanoemulsion makes cannabinoids water compatible, and that small change has actually different impacts and applications. And infused beverages, one obvious application there, right? But then we think there's application in delivering to the patients and also supporting the research, which I will talk about later. But with patient care, especially patients using cannabis, we have seen still struggles
Hmm.
coming from product inconsistency. For example, if the patient still use inhalable flowers, the flower changes from batch to batch and it
Hmm.
decays within itself. And then if not flower, if a patients want to different states, right? They have different dispensary, different product
Hmm.
type. So it's hard to homogenize the potency, efficacy of the product. So as a physician, to recommend a patient in different states, okay, different strengths, right, of the product. So it's hard to recommend. And then when patients want to meter dose, it's relatively hard. Gummy can solve that. Each gummy is 5 milligram. But patients dealing with health conditions may usually want to have hundreds of milligrams of CBD or CBG at a time, right? But then does that equal to 20, 30 gummies a day? Right? So there are limitations with other consumption method, especially benefiting patients. So we think, our emulsion, when we produce the emulsion, is already a food ingredient, tasting good, stable, scalable. But also it is a pharmaceutical-like ingredient, meaning every batch of our emulsion, we ensure the peak distribution and the size and where they are, very consistent. That is our promise to our clients because without this, you can't reach consistent potency, flavor, efficacy, right?
Mhm.
So we are a pharmaceutical-like ingredients. So why can't we leverage those ingredients, to benefit patients? And this is the
Mhm.
birth of the little bottle you were holding. It's called PhytoRx.
Phyto RX. Yep.
Yes. So, and I want to ask you, you have been using PhytoRx for a little bit. How do you like it? How does it help you?
So me and my significant other love it. It's so easy to use, and I do like that it is a consistent, dose. You just pump it once. My boyfriend takes it twice a day, once in the morning and once in the evening. I just do it once a day when I remember. I'm not very good at taking medicine. Of any, like, I'm not very good at my pills or anything.
I'm curious, what does it do for him?
He has a bad back because we're old, and he's a, former, I mean, he still skateboards, but he's a former skateboarder, swimmer, BMX riding. And so injuries have abounded. And so he's got, ankle problems and back problems and works in a stressful job, has, gets headaches and things like that. And I don't think that he realizes it directly, but since he's been using it, I've noticed that his bitching and complaining about his aches and pains has significantly decreased. Like it's not, unless he's doing something strenuous, his back doesn't hurt. He doesn't wake up with a sore back. The headaches. So, it's not that often that he has a headache anymore. I mean, I can't prove it, but since he's been taking this product, I've noticed a difference in the bitching and complaining. And then for me, I have a tendency to not make connections with, oh, I did this and this happened. But I have noticed, I've been trying to pay attention. It is my birthday today. I'm 51. So I have the old lady aches and pains, arthritis. My mom has had both of her shoulders and both of her hips replaced, and she has arthritis in her fingers. And I'm sure that I'm headed down the same path. But I have noticed that my shoulders don't hurt, my knees don't hurt, my hips don't hurt. I haven't had a headache in I don't know how long, which is unusual for me. And although I am on medication, my blood pressure, cholesterol, and liver enzymes have decreased significantly. And I could say it was the medications, but since I've been taking this product, it has come in line and it could have just been a coincidence, but
Wow.
you never know. Right. And so,
Our bodies is complex. I'm happy to hear this feedback. Thank you.
and I wouldn't recommend to anybody go off your cholesterol meds and take this product, but it could be helping in conjunction with whatever pharmaceuticals my doctor recommends and is putting me on. The other thing that's really weird that I notice about uh, CBD products specifically is that I used to get up several times a night to go to the bathroom, to go pee. I have noticed that with CBD specifically, I don't need to get up in the middle of the night. And that is just a happy bonus. Like, I'm just like, wow, I really enjoy not getting up two or three times a night to pee. And I do attribute that to CBD because that happened with other CBD products. But this one I particularly like just because you don't have to eat a gummy, and for somebody who's on a health journey, I don't want to be eating candy. I don't want that. And so this doesn't have any sugar in it. You can add it to your protein drink or your protein yogurt, and you can't taste it. It's just sort of like, I'm going to drink a yogurt anyway, squirt, and donezo.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
And you have done a awesome open box video for the
Mhm.
product. And that video is, oh, we love that video. Thank you so much for your
Yeah.
support. And this is where we want to hear millions of people just like you having this feedback. Because let me talk about the name, PhytoRx. And
Mhm.
this is our mission and philosophy. Phyto is plant, right? Plant healed us, but plants can be variable. If you talk about Chinese medicine, many herbs, you boil it, concoction, and there's no scientific proof. It's all variable. The outcome can be different compounds at different times. So this is the drawback of the phyto. But then we put the RX in there. So that means scientific validated, consistent, effective. So what if we can make plant medicine effective and consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And would that become a alternative way for consumers or patients to look at their health? So, and this is exactly the idea and philosophy behind PhytoRx. We want to deliver plant medicine to patients consistently and effectively. And we start with cannabinoids because cannabinoids, as we know, through emulsion technology can be delivered because of our peak, because of our know-how of making it consistent. So that's the starting point. And then we can evolve to other plans in the future. It's really giving patients an alternative way.
Yeah. What was going through my mind as you were talking about that is a lot of our medicine comes from plants. You can go to the store and you get echinacea pills or garlic pills
Yeah.
or elderberry or whatever. Some of them are just that in a pill, like ground up, dried, whatever, in a pill form. Then you have like extracts. So you can get like, a gummy with elderberry extract in it. So it's a little more processed. And then you can get into single compound pharmaceutical type, like aspirin comes from the willow tree, but in an
Yeah.
aspirin, it's just the single compound that does the thing, gets rid of the headache or reduces the pain and inflammation. So, and you're right, right? It's like old herbalists or old medicine ladies or the tribal person who would put together these concoctions is sort of reminiscent of what we now call the ensemble effect or entourage effect. All of these things work in conjunction. You can mix plants, or you can with cannabis. It's so nice that it has so many different compounds that work in concert with each other just
Mm.
in that one plant. But yeah, it's not very consistent. You can have one, and you can have whether you smoke it or whether you make a full plant extract, those what you get each time is going to be different. A plant from an outdoor cultivator versus an indoor cultivator, hydroponics versus soil, like very variable. When did you harvest it is even going to make a difference. So putting these things into a formulation where it's more consistent, it may not be as exciting because you actually know what you're getting. But for folks that are looking for, that more consistent
Yeah.
effect, something like this is much more desirable. So, I've got a CBD CBG blend. What other cannabinoid, either single compound things do you make or different blends of cannabinoids? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are many options, right? We can emulsify every single cannabinoids or even terpenoids, and you have many, options here. But we start with CBD and CBG for multiple reasons. One is they have anti-inflammation property. And when we look at, inflammation is one of the main cause for many illness conditions. And if inflammation happen in the brain disease, happen in the eye disease, right? In the gut, colitis. So, if you lower the inflammation, potentially you can help a lot of people live a better life. But then again, our genetic are different. So if you and I have the same condition, because our body are different, we may need total different cannabinoids. So we
Mhm.
understand this. Cannabis medicine, plant medicine may be highly personalized in the end, right? So this is where I already hear patients are smoking a joint while having some CBD tincture while eating a gummy. So this is their way of what they have accessible to be customized in a way, right? Inject different cannabinoids into their body from different product forms. But now imagine a future that emulsion technology, you have different cannabinoids emulsion already made. And we can potentially, this make it much easier to blend and customize so that we can personalize a formula for particular patients. But this will follow a route of knowing what this patient need, right? This is
Mhm.
where collaboration with physicians, cannabis doctors are critical because through them, they understand their patients, they understand plant, and they know what the patients may likely need and how their body may evolve and their need of cannabinoids may change over time, right? So when we collaborate with the doctor tightly, those information can getting back to the back end, and we can leverage those information and adjust formulas for patients. So imagine adjust the formula for a pill, that's going to be very hard in a large scale production, but adjusting ratios of liquid emulsion
Mhm.
on theory, it's relatively easier, right? So there's a potential for us to reach a personalization.
So you said any cannabinoid. You could do this with any cannabinoid. So do you like what's the range? I mean, are you
Mhm.
doing CBC, CBN, THCV, CBCV, or CBDV? What cannabinoids are you working with in your different formulations?
Yeah. So on theory, right? If the cannabinoids are oil soluble, then we can emulsify. But our company has a very high standards of
Mm-hmm.
what cannabinoids we want to touch because we are responsible for our clients and the consumers.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many suppliers of the input. You have the input not only based on purity, which is shown on COA, but also the impurity, which is not shown on COA. So we want to be responsible for the input we picked, right? Our quality team, when we have a new supplier, when we change a new input, we go through a very long but responsible process to evaluate the input. For example, we test all the big six contamination potency. We develop our own method to tell the impurity in each compound, in each input. Is this input synthetically made versus a naturally derived, right? So all those will put into consideration when we make a decision to use the input. So, yes, we have, for example, this in a Phyto RX bottle, you will see CBD and CBG, which are
Mm-hmm.
both naturally derived hemp.
So for those folks who don't know, that like cannabinoid wise, plants generally fit into type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, type 5 is what we currently have. Of course, there's more, but that's kind of what is defined right now. So type 1 is your THC dominant, type 2 is a CBD THC balanced. So both of those would fall into the marijuana category. Type 3 is CBD dominant, so you can extract a bunch of CBD out of those plants. Type 4 is CBG dominant, so that means that the CBGA comes before THCA and CBDA. So if it's producing CBGA, there's something broken in that biosynthetic pathway where THC and CBD are not produced. So those are the CBG dominant plants, which have become more available on the market in terms of seed suppliers and things like that. And then type 5 is going to be the cannabinoid void type plants. So you have these are plant extracts. They're not cannabinoids that are made in a lab, which you can fully synthesize cannabinoids, but yours are fully plant derived, right? You extract from the plant and then take that extract and separate things out, pull out things that you don't want, right? Is that correct?
Exactly. So there, for the conversion, there are cannabinoids that you have to convert or produce, for example, CBN,
Mm-hmm.
THCB, or even CBC. If you fully rely on natural derived path, this is not economical to extract them from this trace amount in the plant.
Yeah,
So companies have developed their methods to produce those cannabinoids, TCBN, THCB, CBC in the lab, but the purity and impurity needs to be clearly checked out, right? Before
right.
anyone can use it. Yes.
Because that conversion could be, if you were a bad chemist, could be incomplete, taking CBD and either making a lot of unwanted products or not making it all into the thing that you're supposed, or having leftover solvents that you weren't removed correctly. So your company is very stringent, very strict, very rigorous on
Yes.
making sure that there are no unwanted byproducts and there are no leftover nasties, solvents, things like that that you need to make the push over to whatever you're trying to convert this into.
Yes, yes, because we know the quality of the input determines the quality of our emotion, the output, right?
Mhm,
We're delivering an effect, a function. So that's why our quality team pay a lot of attention when we evaluate our suppliers. We even
mhm,
go visit them to their farms, to their extraction facility to see how they produce and purify those compounds. So,
mhm,
and those actions will need more and more. I would love to see more farm visits or lab visits, and I think this is where I encourage the industry to check on each other, right?
mhm,
Especially a supplier. Check with them and talk to their quality team. Are they following GMP? what kind of quality experience they have, right? What's the track record, back record they have. So those are all the things we check.
And so things like pesticide use or heavy metals could be sneaky, right? Because if they are somehow like cannabis is a hyper accumulator. So if there are heavy metals in the soil, a cannabis plant's just going to suck that up and hold on to it. And so things like pesticides and heavy metals can not only accumulate in the plant, but as things are extracted, they sort of get concentrated. And so I feel like it's especially important to look for other things that might have snuck into the extract, especially in the hemp industry, because hemp is not really regulated like marijuana is regulated. There's lots of cultivators out there that are growing the plant for cannabinoids that are not THC, but they're not required to have any other testing other than compliance testing to make sure that the plant is under 0.3% total THC at the pre-harvest test. Other than that, they're not really required to have any other tests. No molds, no fungi, no pesticides, no heavy metals. Can just sell the flower straight up to whoever is going to be extracting or selling it as smokable hemp. I'm sure that your suppliers are vetted
Yes.
rigorously to make sure.
So we track the whole chain of custody from the biomass COA all the way
Mhm.
to emulsion COA, with the crude, with the distillate, with the emulsion. So we know what's going on in each step. And yeah, the hemp industry need regulation for us
Mhm.
to pay attention, right? But we're leading this investment from our attention and resource into understanding our supply chain is critical.
Hmm. And the good hemp farmers realize that they do need the full panel. If it's going for consumption in one way or another, like
Mhm.
that full panel testing for all of those things that the marijuana market is required to test for should be tested for in any hemp product because it's going to consumption. So we need to know, are there yeasts? Are there molds? Are there heavy metals? Like we need to look for all those nasty things. So
Yeah.
kudos to those hemp farmers that get those full panel COAs before selling their products to a manufacturer who may not be as responsible. So what's your favorite cannabinoid?
I like THC, I like CBD, I like CBG. I like them all. I like to feel balanced.
Like the big three.
Yes,
Do you have any favorite minor cannabinoids?
THCV has been really interesting. This focused effect, but not getting so much elevated. It's a
Mhm.
very balanced outcome, right? So I think not only me, but many of our teammates love it. And we see THCV has a lot of potential in the beverage.
I would love to see THCV on the market more. And I think you're right. I am very, very sensitive to THC. I don't particularly like it. I never really have. So I kind of steer clear of things with THC in it because I never know how it's going to affect me because I am super sensitive. However, THCV doesn't have the same effect. I don't feel yucky when I partake with THCV. And I feel like, it seems to have an effect on increasing your metabolism and satiating hunger so that if it could be used for things like diabetes or weight loss or kind of balancing that out, which
Yeah.
is exciting in this world of Zempic.
Yeah, I hope more researchers are opening up to study this. And this is a connection to what we talk about making cannabinoids water compatible. You can change how people consume it. You can change how patients use it to heal themselves. And then you can change how researchers do research on cannabinoids. This is another thing I want to mention that when we offer cannabinoids to animals, to do animal studies, for example, mice, usually a researcher will do a gavage. So they use a long needle and it's an oil formula,
Mhm.
put this long needle from the mouth into the stomach of the mice,
Mhm.
insert it and inject it to ensure every drop of the oil is in the mice.
They don't spit it out.
It's really stressful for the animal. And then
Mhm.
you have to observe the behavior of the animal after
Mhm.
this. So you stress them out and you observe them how, it's kind of contradictory. Another limitation is when you inject this oil into the animal, the oil has limited absorption, right?
Mhm.
So if the animal to animal, the absorption can be variable, how can we ensure your peers repeat the study you did, right? An idea we had that we are validating with some professors is, can we allow mice or rabbits to drink cannabis infused emulsion, right? So put that into the water and to
Mhm.
see if they like to drink it by themselves. So you don't
Mhm.
have to force it. And then, smaller droplet size will offer a potential higher PK so
Mhm.
that, it's more effective for the animal to absorb the cannabinoids, to have an effect, right?
Mhm.
So, and then your peers can repeat the study and study. We're starting getting some early feedback and we are tuning, okay, what formula is best for my animals.
And are you giving them a choice, like two water bottles, one infused and one not, to see if they prefer one over the other? Or are you just giving them the formulated water to see if they'll drink it?
That's where our professors are doing their whole thing. This is not my forte. I can check in with them in a couple of weeks to see how did the experiment go. But in the end, the goal is to maybe produce a research kit for animal studies, right? So the researchers in the lab can just pipette, right, the needed cannabinoids ratio to and put into water. And for animal studies, make it very easy and consistent. And we know the PK. We already test the absorption, the PK, the Tmax, right? So you can really just cite those data. And then that way we can truly help researchers to propel the cannabis research.
And so what's the like grant money situation for research like this? Because back when I was doing my PhD, the National Institute of Health really didn't have a lot of money. Like they were giving out a lot of money for research, but it was more like CBD for this indication, or
Mm.
tell us how bad marijuana is. There was like no money for any other cannabinoids. And as we know, the NIH has been gutted recently. Is there money for cannabinoid research at the moment, or is it still really tough, just as tough as it was, tougher than ever, or not as tough?
Yeah, I think it's still very tough. But I have heard or I have met some professors getting grants. So, for example, the DCC in California grants the UC systems of different focus studies. And for some human studies, this is interesting. We were involved with some human trial with cannabinoids. And the professors want to give the testers a control sample, a blind sample, and an active sample, right?
Mhm.
But then they were thinking about using tincture. That was the only way they can administrate to a patient. But then the tincture has issues like two issues. One is the control doesn't have a bitterness. Well, the active has a bitterness, so people can tell what is what. Secondarily, if you want this patient to drink this tincture for 30 days, it's hard to, the consumption method is hard to adjust to get a habit of, right? So the professor, and then is the accurate dosing. If you suck it up with the 1 minute meal, so it's sometimes it's 0.8 mil, 0.9 mil. It's not really 1 mil, right? So it's really hard to measure. And professor said, can you actually emulsify this? I said, yeah, sure, we can. We have a GMP license here. We can follow the process. And can you make a control? Yes, we can. We can make a blank emulsion with no cannabinoids, and the emulsion will look similar and taste similar to the
Mm.
active emulsion. And third thing is, okay, now you can make the blank, you can make the active. How would you give to the patient? I said, okay, you know what? Tell me what kind of spec you want. Tell me how many milligram your patients to drink to take every time. Maybe we can dilute it into a pump, into a glass bottle with a pump, right? You have control, you have active, you have pump, and each pump give you the certain amount you want to study, right? You just tell the users, okay, drink this in the morning, 1 pump or 2 pumps, and then give me the follow up the results. So I start to see emulsified cannabinoids in the form factor in the pump can potentially help a lot of researchers do their human studies.
So you were saying, with the tinctures, sometimes a person might suck up 0.9 or 1.1 or zero point 0.6.
Mhm.
And I feel like anytime you give the ability for a human to make error, they will.
Yeah,
Even sometimes when you don't give them the opportunity to make an error, they also will.
yeah.
I don't know, like I can see that there could be the opportunity to not do a full pump or just do a little extra squirt just 'cause, you know what I mean? Or maybe there was an air bubble trapped in the pump for some
Yeah,
reason. So
yeah.
are you absolutely sure that one pump equals one pump every single time, or is it just more accurate than a dropper, but also maybe not
Yeah,
100%?
that's a very good question. And for a project we support using the same pump and format, it's going through FDA or the IND study, right? So they want to see how accurate, how stable the whole thing is. And then we actually measured each pump, like pump it and then measure each pump, how many weight, how many grams of liquid is coming out. And we generate this distribution. And even this is a food grade pump, right? But even this pump give us fairly tight distribution.
You pumping, or was it like a regular, like undergrad student, or did you have a bunch of people and test multiple people doing
Mm,
the pumps
mm,
multiple times to see?
right. This is
And did they
where,
know it was part of a study? Because I feel like if I was under the scrutiny of part of a study, I'm going to make sure that I'm pumping.
yes,
Whereas if I'm at home, I'm going to be like, boop, boop, boop,
you
boop.
you know the trick. So the pump, it should like one action to the end, right? Do not stop in the between because you're gonna have air bubbles and stuff. So just one pump in the to the end. That is the full pump. Yes, that's where when we did this in the lab to collect the
Mhm.
data, but when we send the bottle out to the testers, we have a little instruction to the testers. Okay, this is how you maybe make a video. This is how you're gonna pump. Don't put it halfway, just all the way in. But again, this concept is there. The pump is good enough for FDA to say, okay, this is pretty accurate, pretty consistent, but it's not perfect. And then we can make a better pump, right? There are medical pumps out there, a little more sophisticated, a little more expensive, but more consistent. You can have different levels. So, but I think the idea is interesting and we can keep innovating on it.
I just am reflecting on my time in university, being an undergrad and a grad student, on how we use a lot of pipettes. How inaccurate you can be with a pipette. And I just saw
Training.
on LinkedIn that there was a 56-page instruction guide on how to pipette. And I'm like, how is there 56 pages on how to use a pipette? Like, it's not that difficult. But then when you think about it, as an undergrad, we had a part of our practical test was how accurate are your pipetting skills? And honestly, mine were perfect, of course, but the rest of the class all over the place. But
Yeah, that's a great example. Even pipette, an accurate device, the way you use it, it will generate different results.
and teaching people how to use a pipette,
Yeah,
like you got to go down to the click. If
yeah,
you go beyond the click, then you're now sucking up too much. Or if you do it too fast, you could suck everything up into the little foam
yeah.
filter. And then you're missing some product in there. And yeah, I guess there are a lot of ways you can screw up
Yeah.
pipe.
You can, a product can may have the best intention, but in the reality, in this real world, it's just a lot of things can happen.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if you give a person the ability to any kind of out, any kind of gap, they're gonna screw it up just because people are people.
Yeah,
All right, so do
we're doing pretty
you
good.
do you do you add okay, so this is something interesting. I'm going to premise this with a little tidbit of information that I found out over the last week from two different people that cannabinoids are actually terpenes.
Mhm.
Both Dr. Jeff Raber, and Russ Hudson. I went to it. So Russ is a good friend of mine, and first time I've ever heard him speak. Whenever we've been at a conference, every single time we get scheduled at the same time, so I've never seen him speak. Finally, got the I got to see him speak and do his Terp 101 talk, and he said, cannabinoids are terpenes. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. But it's a class of molecules, right? It's how the molecule is put together that makes it a terpene or a terpenoid. And cannabinoids fall under that terpene umbrella. Do you add any of the smelly aromatic terpenes to any of your formulations, or if you strictly cannabinoids in the cannabinoid class.
We don't intentionally add it unless our clients have a design or goal to use it. But the cannabinoids come in usually for consistency's sake, right? Not every brand wants to, or products wants to have those terpenoids. That's why our cannabinoids, the input is fairly consistent with the
Mhm.
low terpene incoming, right? But that can be customized.
Okay. And so would you, keeping your formulation consistent and clean, would you work, take your cannabinoids, put them in formulation, and then use like a terpene company to vet them, of course, very closely. And there's some good terpene companies and there's some great terpene companies. I would imagine that you would pair up with one of them to formulate something to mix together, maybe.
Yeah,
Is that,
it
yeah.
can. Yeah, it can happen like that. And some turbine companies already developed their own mixture to
Hmm.
simulate either a plant, the flavor or the effect of the plant.
Hmm.
So I think the terpene is very interesting, and I feel not enough attention has been paid for terpene in edibles or beverages yet, right? There's
Hmm.
interest there, but how to fully leverage the terpene coupled with cannabinoids to deliver a certain effect, this is a still area that need to be developed.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that there are more interesting compounds than terpenes. Like terpenes are ubiquitous in the plant world, and we don't talk about dank mangoes and, fire lemons. I think terpenes are cool and I think they have their place, but I think there's more compounds that are interesting and have therapeutic potentials, but we haven't gotten there yet. We're still finishing up terpenes. I can't wait for the next bandwagon to come along that we can all jump on. Are you supporting any clinical trials right now with your product or preclinical trials? Or is this just something that you're working towards?
Currently, we are supporting some professors
Mm,
going through a trial. For example, some are preclinical, some are animal studies.
mhm,
Indiana University, we're supporting some projects there. With Central Florida University, we have some project going on. Now it's early on, but the concept is recognized by the researchers that, wow, maybe there is a new arm of doing this research. And it could be a distillate MCT oil version and an emulsion version, right? So the
mm,
emulsion version, it could be, because they're already doing those arms already,
yeah,
and adding a new arm, having a new an administration route to them is very interesting. So
yeah.
I start to see a lot of people start to click this idea and started picking up this idea.
When I was working at Mile High Labs, I was tasked with figuring out how to do some CBG preclinical trials with mice. And I had it set up with a couple of universities in Northern Ireland and then UNC in Greeley, Colorado to do those trials, but it would have been funded by internal money, like the company money. They wanted to support this research, which that never happened as the company imploded. But CBG it was like there's a lot of research on CBD, and there's, the Epidiolex, they put a lot of money and effort into doing preclinical and clinical trials. And in 2019, CBG was just coming on the market and we wanted to know more about it. So we wanted to set up these trials, which never happened. And I honestly haven't kept a close eye on it, but do you know what the status is of CBG and or other cannabinoids other than CBD and THC that have been produced?
This part I'm not expert in. We
Chemist, not
are
biologist.
Yeah, this is where I put myself into the supporting role to the researchers, to biologists to do the study. Say, hey, we can actually emulsify it and make it more effective when you deliver to the animal or patients.
Mhm,
So try to use it. But I really give credits to them who do those trials. And
mhm.
with human trials, I know how hard it is. Inviting them, recruitment screening, and this whole visits and draw bloods and do analysis is very tedious and it's slow, but it's meaningful.
Yeah. And then people drop out and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
All right. So what else do we need to discuss? So you're a chemist, right? You are making this emulsified cannabinoid. product, what do people misunderstand about your expertise? So, for example, I just said you're a chemist, not a biologist. So there was my misunderstanding there. So I know that you go to a lot of conferences and you talk to a lot of people. Is there something that people like get wrong about you? Or
Mm,
like,
mhm.
there's a lot of products out there that like you really can't tell what's a good product versus a bad product. Are people like misunderstanding what you're doing to make your product?
Mm. Not really. I have not experienced a lot of confusion, especially for me, what I do, what's my specialty, and what I stand for.
Mhm.
I didn't invent cannabinoids. I didn't invent ECS system. I was
Mhm.
only wrapped them into a new form factor and made them motor compatible. And this opened up applications and potential for people to use it. That's all, right? And when I stay in this lane, I think people understand my specialty and the value from it. So I'm not overclaiming, like understanding cannabinoids ratios or biology effect. It's where the collaboration between me and other labs. This is where what really excites me is when I go out to talk to professors, researchers, hospitals, clinicians, and educate them on cannabinoids, emotion. They say, wow, there's a new way here. This is interesting. And then seeing they start to leveraging this new tool to benefit their research and benefit their patients, that's the most rewarding for me.
Hmm. So I know there is a deficit of education among clinicians, physicians, medical professionals in general about the endocannabinoid system, its function, and that cannabinoids are essential, whether they're endocannabinoids or phytocannabinoids, to literally our body functioning correctly. So when you're out there, do you come across people who are like, what are you talking about? Endocannabinoid system, like what weed?
Oh yeah, the education. There is, well, if you put a divide into within the industry, outside the industry, right? So within
Hmm.
the industry, I think we're all kind of believers and we educate ourselves regarding the new thing. But outside the industry, recently I find it interesting that for doctors and clinicians who were trained from this traditional Western medicine culture, and they believe plant medicine is, there's no scientific, lacking scientific evidence and it's not consistent. They're not wrong, right? But then their philosophy was FDA way is one medicine, one molecule for one condition for millions of people. Then this is what we know, right? And so this is where when I really hope more of them, the clinicians, can be converting and starting to learn cannabinoids. And this is where I say, when is your last time to completely change your attitude or idea towards something? 180. And that actually shows how much open you are to new ideas and new potentials. And this is where, when I talk to cannabis clinicians, doctors who believe in this industry, they were actually from the traditional medicine, right? They were seeing the evolving door of this healthcare, right? This pill after pill situation.
Mm.
And they are, worried and they are enlightened when they see their study, right, from of the cannabis study. So I have really a good time talking to them, and I hope more clinician doctors are like them to be open to see what's possible out there.
So it surprises you how open some of these folks are when they've been trained in the traditional model, then they see the results and the potential for cannabinoids and these plant medicines and the potential to maybe remove some of the pharmaceuticals, which a lot of them have. Like, yes, they fix a problem, but they also create other problems along the way. Are you surprised by the openness of some of these traditionally trained doctors and clinicians to cannabinoids in general?
I'm not surprised. I am encouraged when I know them, and I hope more clinicians are like them, follow their step. And this is where, going back to the phyto, because one more issue I noticed is right now with the research for the same condition, a group will say, okay, we find out 50 milligrams CBD may treat this condition. Another group may say, actually need 200 milligrams. And you dig into the literature, one is using smoke, one is using tincture, right? So if I am the new doctor, if I'm digging into research, I say, okay, wow, it's just variable. This plant is variable. How can I prescribe to a patient? Do I do
Mhm.
50 or 200? So this is where Phytos RX, this new goal is to what if we can standardize the dosing, right? We continue to study the PK, continue to study the PD, have observational studies. Then in the end, we exactly know one pump does what, two pumps does what, right? And then this will become a playbook for the doctors to come in. And then they will say, okay, now we have a kind of a playbook. We know what does the emotion do, and we can combine different emotions, right, to achieve different effects. And that's where I think the consistency can be convincing to the newcomers.
Mhm. Mhm. So I know that you're promoting your Fido RX because it's awesome and you should be. User reporting when they're not involved in a clinical trial, even though there are flaws in that because they're self-medicate, they're half a pump or, air bubbles, whatever. Like you don't have any control over that and you're not, taking blood and all that. But is as people start to use your product, is there a way for people to report what they're experiencing? If they're using it for a particular something, or like me, I just use it for general wellness. Is it
Yeah.
fixing anything that you weren't expecting? Is there a way for people to self-report where you can collect the data, compile the data, and sort of look for trends among your consumers?
That is a great question. And we are building that system. And that's why we are working with clinicians, doctors, because they're experts to see, to monitor the patients. And we want to generate more patient case studies, case reports. A case report is one individual with a condition. They go to the doctors, and doctors say, hey, try Phyto X and see how it help you. And then every visit back, they will monitor the patient's improvement or even side effects from consuming PhytoRx. We want to work with doctors, and we're open to looking for new collaborations with doctors who are open to collaborate. We want to generate those case reports, not only for us to know how does PhytoRx work with patients, how many pump we need with the condition, but also to educate the new patients, the new doctors. Hey, there are 20 case reports of a variety of different issues coming from inflammation, right? They all have a similar observation, a similar trend. That is very valuable. So we are starting to work with doctors to get those data.
I love like crowdsourced data, like iNaturalist, for example. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but iNaturalist is an app you can get on your phone. You go out for a hike, you see a pretty flower, you take a picture of it, it identifies it. But it's not just giving you information, it's collecting information like, the date, the time, the GPS location. And so while it's collecting all this data, what it's doing is figuring out like, okay, with global climate change, for example, are things emerging sooner than they should? Plants, insects, whatever, are things shifting their range in response to things like climate change? So are things, as the earth is warming or whatever, are things shifting their range further north because it's getting
Yeah.
too hot further south? And so this crowdsourced data, it's fun because you go on a hike and you take a picture of all the cool things that you see and you become more interested and you start realizing that there aren't just 20 types of plants. There's a ton. It's an angiosperm, but he's starting to learn more about plants and animals, but they're also collecting the data on where is he located and what this thing is and the time of year, the time of day, so that it's like gathering big data, bioinformatics, machine learning. Like I think you need an app where if somebody
Yeah.
purchases this, they can scan the QR code, download the app, and you are gathering data on, okay, where are you located? And ask them questions, or they can input, whatever time of day. I mean, you can collect that data anyway as they're on their app. Oh, this time of
Certainly.
day.
That
Yep.
is a great idea that we need to do. And
Yep.
we need to do a formal way of generating case reports, but also informal way to getting more data from the patients, right? How do you use it? What kind of beverage do you put in? How many pumps do you use? What is your like of the flavor? And how do you feel? Getting those reports is really important. And yes, we're gonna have it.
Yeah, like
That's
do you
great.
have any, like when they first start, do you have any of these symptoms? And then ask them things every day and
Yeah.
uh, like it could be linked to like an Apple Watch or something where it's like sleep patterns. Has your sleep patterns changed? Has your heart rate changed? Has, oxygen saturation or anything, literally anything. And I guess you could make it so that people could opt into more intrusive questioning versus, surface level questioning, depending on their level of interest in contributing to science. Because I feel like people do want to contribute to science, but people are like, I'm not a scientist, so I can't contribute. But it's like, you can. And
Mhm.
through things like iNaturalist, there's Project Budburst, crowdsourcing citizen science project where you can report like when the lilacs are just starting to bud versus when they start to bloom. And they're tracking this very closely, and it's all linked to climate change and how it's affecting various areas in the United States. And I think beyond. But it's just super cool, and people are really into it. They're like, yeah, I'm helping with science, even though I'm not a scientist, because I love lilacs or I love butterflies, and we're tracking the monarch migration or whatever the case may be. So, yeah, I think having an app for a product like this, and then
Yeah.
people can self-report and kind of feel like they're helping.
Yes, yes, they are. So one of the things we want to achieve is when people use PhytoRx, it's not only the using the emotion, that is just a form factor, but we want them to subscribe to a new way of looking at their health, right? And consider their health being control, alternative philosophy, and that subscribing, contributing to your body's reaction, right? To be conscious about your healing journey and share that with the other patients. That is how you're contributing to this community.
Yeah, and like when you buy products for your health or well-being, I feel like it's all kind of one way. Like this is a company telling you this is their product and this is how it's going to make you feel and this is what it's going to do and this is why you should take it and this is how much you should take. But there's little opportunity for you to give them feedback unless you're on like Yahoo, like I'm going to give a card
Yeah,
review, blah blah blah. Like, and
right.
that's not super helpful. Whereas if you could gather actual data, I think people, I don't know, I would be receptive to that.
Yes, that's a great idea, and we will, execute on that.
Awesome. No, because yeah, I'm a big proponent of citizen science, and
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like the general public is an underutilized source of information,
Mm.
and if anybody,
Especially for cannabis medicine. If we compare patient-reported outcome versus a traditional FDA way of like a controlled randomized trial, right? So, and this is where the two philosophy compared, drastically different. One is one condition, one medicine for millions of people. One is, multiple active for a root cause of different conditions like inflammation, sleep, stress. That's a root cause, right? And then for millions of people. And so in the traditional FDA way, they don't look at the general outcomes. Are you getting better? They only look at one condition. Is this condition getting better? And here it is a different way of looking at things. So
Mhm.
especially with AI, new tools coming up, previously we just have a limited capability to absorb the information, right? To analyze the information and to really make sense of it, right? I
Yep.
mean, I asked a pharmacist, why don't you put two compounds together to make a new medicine? And she said, it's hard. Even one compound is hard. One
Mhm.
input, output, many different genetics. Now imagine two compounds, different ratios. It's out of our capability. Now, with the new tool, I think it's really exciting to see how will this new tool AI to help us understand our body with the plant medicine.
AI and machine learning and large data, you have to develop some software or you have to go to a statistician or something to, and when I did my sniff study, it was 40 odor descriptors, 55 participants, and 15 different cannabis samples. So you multiply all that together, that's a shit ton of data points. And I was looking at the spreadsheet, I was just like, oh my God, how am I gonna analyze this? And I did go see a statistician, and he's like, this is gonna be incredibly difficult. And I ended up like reducing the aromas into like four different groups or five
Yeah.
different groups and then
Yeah.
taking it from there. But you're right, with the AI and machine learning, you can input the data, large data, complex data sets, and it'll pull out the patterns, the correlations, the this is going on, and it's beyond what our brains and capabilities can do, I think. So having
Yeah.
an app, even though you're collecting a lot of data now, it's possible to process it using these crazy tools that we have now.
Yes. Exciting times.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So is there anything else that you want to talk about?
Wow, this conversation has been wide and deep, I think. I love it. I love it.
Or like the Great Lakes. So I guess just the last thing would be Dr. Hahn, Harold Hahn, the Happy Chemist. If people want to get a hold of you, if they want to talk about PhytoRx, if they want to know more about nanoemulsions or any of the things that we've talked about, or even something that maybe we didn't talk about, but maybe you're the perfect person to talk and I just didn't ask the question, where can people go to find you so that they can either look into PhytoRx or ask you questions or whatever?
Sure. So you can reach out to me at harold@phytorx.co. And, this is really for clinicians, nurses, and doctors who still believe in cannabis can heal patients and who still believe there is a better version of giving cannabis to patients. Would love to collaborate with you and, generate case studies, helping your community and your patients. And this really makes the cannabis as a medicine to shine, and I'm excited to work with you.
Okay, perfect. And I mean, you're on LinkedIn,
Yes,
so people can also hit you up on LinkedIn, I guess. Uh,
yes.
so that's good. And yeah, this has been an awesome conversation so much.
Thank
Thank you
you,
so
Anna,
much.
and
Yeah.
thank you for talking to me on your birthday again. This is an honor.
Well, I was going to go out and party, but this has been better.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot so much. And hopefully we'll get to talk again soon
Yes,
because
we will.
it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
We will. We will. And
All right. Thanks,
all right.
Harold.